The first inhabitants in Australia were the ancestors of the present indigenous people. Whether these first migrations involved one or several successive waves and distinct peoples is still subject to academic debate, as is its timing. The minimum widely accepted time frame places presence of humans in Australia at 40,000 to 43,000 years before present, while the upper range supported by others is 60,000 to 70,000 years BP. In any event, this migration was achieved during the closing stages of the Pleistocene epoch, when sea levels were typically much lower than they are today. Repeated episodes of extended glaciation resulted in decreases of sea levels by some 100,150 m. The continental coastline therefore extended much further out into the Timor Sea than it does today, and Australia and New Guinea formed a single landmass, known as Sahol, connected by an extensive land bridge across the Arafura Sea, Gulf of Carpentaria and Torres Strait. The ancestral Australian Aboriginal peoples were thus long established and continued to develop, diversify and settle through much of the continent. As the sea levels again rose at the terminus of the most recent glacial period some 10,000 years ago, the Australian continent once more became a separated landmass. However, the newly formed 150 kilometers wide Torres Strait with its chain of islands still provided the means for cultural contact and trade between New Guinea and the northern Cape York Peninsula. During the 1970s and 1980s, around 120,000 Southern Asian refugees migrated to Australia. During that 20 years, Australia first began to adopt a policy of what Minister of Immigration Al Grasby termed multiculturalism. In 2004 to 2005, Australia accepted 123,000 new settlers, a 40% increase over the past 10 years. The largest number of immigrants, 40,000 in 2004-05, moved to Sydney. The majority of immigrants came from Asia, led by China and India. English, as you have already read, is not a pure language. I don't think there really are any pure languages in the world. But English is definitely not a pure language. English, in fact, has borrowed from over 350 languages in its history. So it's a variety of many languages. Some people say it's like a dog, a mongrel dog, a dog that has been made up of many different dogs. The English language is like that. By looking at the history of the English language, we learn about the history of the English people. The two things are closely connected. So, in fact, today we are not only learning about language, but we are learning about history. The fact that English has borrowed words from over 350 languages has been viewed differently throughout history. So for example, in Shakespeare's time, people were very angry about words which were not, they thought, original English words, words which came from other languages. They didn't like them. Well, it's like, why is Australian housing is so expensive? Essentially, it's showing of how well the Australian economy has been doing over the last 15 years. We have had 15 years, more or less, of an uninterrupted economic growth during which average earning has been raised by close to 90%. While over the course of that period, the standard variable mortgage rate has roughly halved. That meant that the amount which a typical home-buying household can afford to borrow under rules which aren't strictly applied as they used to be, had more than doubled. Over the same period, rising immigration and falling average household size has meant that the number of households looking for accommodation has risen by about 1.5 million. That's around 200,000 more than the number of dwellings has increased by. So you have had a substantial increase in the purchasing power of households. No net increase in the supply of housing, hence all that addition purchasing power has gone into pushing up the price of housing. I suppose it's the truism to point out that citizens need to be well informed. Maybe it's something we take for granted in our liberal Western democracies. But there will be plenty of societies, well, that is run counter to explicit government policy. Many areas of the world still suffer from the reverie of the deliberate missing information. Governments, especially the unelected ones, but also some elected ones, have denied the events that have ever taken place. They pretend that other events did take place. They would help spin what they cannot deny. In short, they've used every trick of the book to pull the eyes of the world, and in an attempt to cover up their mistakes. One of the most amazing things in the speaker's life is studying cosmology. Studying cosmology is the most amazing thing for the speaker because the universe is mysterious. Scientists previously believed the Big Bang happened 10 to 20 billion years ago. However, a more precise measurement indicates the universe is 13.8 billion years old, instead of 14, and has kept changing ever since. Which is perfectly matched. The universe is little older than the oldest star, which has 13 billion years old, the Big Bang theory. Even when the universe begins is known, people still need to understand how the Big Bang happened, and how the universe works. And know about the future.